For the past 30 years, radio host, author, speaker, accomplished pianist, and black belt in Hapkido, Peter has personally traveled the path of the family caregiver. In the process, he has learned that a caregiver can not only survive, but thrive in the midst of often grim circumstances. In an unparalleled journey with his wife, Gracie, he has navigated a medical nightmare that has mushroomed to 78 operations, the amputation of both of Gracie's legs, treatment by more than 75 doctors in 12 hospitals, 7 medical insurance companies, and $10 million in medical bills. The experience unquestionably qualifies him as an expert, as a caregiver, and made him a most ardent champion of the family caregiver, providing him with an astonishing understanding of healthcare issues and a deep compassion for others. Seamlessly weaving frankness with his outrageous humor, Peter brings freshness, hope, and laughter into the painful places of caregiving. He regularly speaks on a wide range of topics that include healthcare and finances, caregivers in the workplace, facing adversity, thriving as a caregiver, and family relationships. Earning a Bachelor of Music from Belmont University, Peter is an accomplished pianist and often incorporates the expressive style of music into his presentations as he entertains, inspires, and challenges audiences from all walks of life. He recently released the first ever CD exclusively made for caregivers entitled Songs for the Caregiver. Peter has a lengthy list of media credits including Forbes, USA Today, The Today Show, ARC, WebMD, FoxNews.com, Guidepost, ChristianPost.com, TVN, People Magazine, and the BBC. Since 2013, he has carried his message of hope and health for caregivers to the airwaves, hosting his own weekly show on WLAC 1510 iHeartRadio in Nashville. Peter's book, Hope for the Caregiver, is in its 3rd printing, and his newest book, 7 Caregiver Landmines and How You Can Avoid Them, provides practical tools for caregivers. Please join me in welcoming Peter Rosenberger.
I'm sorry you'll have to listen on that. She should have just said, "Here's Peter." You know, I look pretty good for 75, don't I? The problem is I'm 25. This is what caregiving does to you. Don't let this happen. I'm Puerto Rican. Don't let this happen to somebody you love. This is what will happen to you as a caregiver. And now I've been doing this for 32 years. Actually, that information is out of date, sadly. This is my life. My wife had her 80th surgery this year. Her 79th and 80th, actually the same day. I will tell you this. I speak Southern, by the way, because y'all, are there going to be subtitles up there? It would help. Can you understand me okay? Somebody said, I asked Bonnie at the table, they said, do you know where I'm from? They said, in the South. And I said, well, everything is south of here. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, originally from South Carolina. Let me just explain something to you. Southern is not geographic in the United States. Southern is a way of life. Anybody understand that? Yeah. Anybody ever been down south in the United States? How did you do? You obviously made it back. And we're known for our great manners in the South, but we've got nothing on you all in Canada. Y'all are like insufferably nice. I was at the airport. I mean, even the guy with the rubber glove. I mean, they are really nice people. And sir, if you don't mind, sir, you know, I mean, the guy with the baton. I mean, he's very nice. And I really appreciate you being here. But I will say this surgery we had with my wife, and you learn to have a sense of humor about all these things. And I hear that you guys like to do that, like to laugh and cut up. Do I understand that correctly? Now, Canadians, we're not, in the South, in the United States, we're not, familiar with Canadians being a raucous group, except at hockey games. But we're going to have a good time this morning. But I was at the hospital with my wife, and after the surgery, she had to have a nerve repaired in her arm, then it pinch and causes her to go numb and have some atrophy in her right hand. This is from transferring to a wheelchair for years. She got hurt in a wreck 35 years ago this month. She was 17, she fell asleep at the wheel, going to visit a friend in the middle of the day, slammed into a concrete abutment, and it was a bad accident. One resident later said it was like 200 breaks. It was a pretty brutal wreck. And I didn't know her at the time. I met her much later. She came back to school at Belmont. She was a vocal performance major. And by the way, I would play the piano for you. There's two grands right around the corner over there, and I thought about just wheeling them in here, but nah. I don't know a lot of Canadian songs. You know, maybe I'd pull out some Bryan Adams or something. That's about all I know. And I met this young girl. I saw her limping, beautiful young woman. And don't take my word for it, Google her. I was Googling her that day. We didn't have Google. And then I heard her sing, and I was captivated by her, and I thought, okay, I'm going to take care of this young woman for the rest of her life. I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea how well I would do. I had no idea how poorly I would do. I just knew that I was captivated by her. And we got married, and the surgeries just kept coming. And eventually she ended up giving up both of her legs after each child was born. We didn't know if we would be able to have children. And the doctor said, if you're going to have them young. So I went to her and I said, well, baby, the doctor says we got to. I got a prescription and everything. And I don't know if that was covered under Obamacare. I bet it was covered under Clinton care. So, we're going to have a good time this morning. I did not send emails to that woman. I sent it over. So, here we are, all these years later, and she's still having surgeries. They're not going away. She's had at least another 80, 90, 100 smaller procedures that I don't even count as surgery. She just had one of those 2 weeks ago. Going to have another one soon. But I'm in the hospital with her at Vanderbilt University. They're in Nashville. Anybody here at Vanderbilt?
Yeah.
We've got a great HD doctor there. Y'all know who it is? Dr. Daniel Clausen. Look him up. Great friend of mine. He's one that really got me. This is my 5th HD conference I've had the pleasure of attending and speaking. And it was all because of him and his work. And I'll tell you my HD connection in a minute, but I just want to give you an update on what's going on. So I'm wheeling her out after surgery. They loosened the nerve. They did it so she didn't have quite all the feeling back, but at least it's not going to get worse. And so she got her arm in a sling, and I helped her get her dress on, and she's wearing, about knee length, I guess. And she has 2 prosthetic limbs, and she doesn't wear skin covering on. So it's real robotic looking. She's been doing that for 25 years. She just doesn't care. Now it's kind of fashionable. You see people going around looking like the Terminator, but back when she started doing it, she really was a trendsetter, and there weren't beautiful young women doing it. And now, but she doesn't care. So we're wheeling out. She's pretty used to my stupidity. And we get on this big elevator, and there's full of people, and we're all staring at her. Now this is an HD conference, so are any of you all familiar with people staring? Just want to see if I'm going to. So they're all staring at her, and they weren't even being coy about it. They're just staring. And finally I'd had enough, and I looked at all of them. Here she is in a sling, 2 prosthetic legs, and I said, worst hysterectomy ever. And they all flinched. I mean, they didn't know what to say. She was just rolling her eyes at me. And I'm wheeling her off. The door opens up, and I'm wheeling her off, and I said, she put up a fight, God love her. Never told them any different, and that's the way I handle things. I don't know how you all handle some of the things, but I think humor does help a little bit. My great-grandfather had HD. This is my father's father, was one of his children, was questionable, but he died at a younger age, and so did his brother, who was also questionable. He died at a younger age, but his aunt did have it. And then her 2 children, his cousins, that both succumbed to this disease. So I've been familiar with this, and my dad was quite worried about this for some time. My mother was particularly worried as well and did a lot of research on it. Didn't call it HD then. And I've known about this terrible disease for a long time. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and hang out with you. Annie, thanks for all the work. Robin and Amber, is Amber still here? Wasn't that great, what she did? That was just really good. And for all the First Nation, if they're not here, thank you for letting us just be here on the land. Thank you for that. And, there are a lot of research opportunities going on. We're talking about cures and talking about treatment and all that stuff. That's not what I do. Those are great things, and I want you to rejoice in them and get excited about them. I'm here to talk about what do we do until then, particularly as caregivers. And I've been a caregiver now for so long that I don't really know any other life but that. This morning I was looking at my watch. I have an assistant there with my wife. My son is there. I had meals prepared. When I go out of town, I start preparing meals like days in advance to get everything ready, get everything organized, make sure all the schedule's done. I can't leave her alone overnight. I can leave her alone for hours, but not overnight. She has so many broken things going on with her. It's not just the amputations. That's the least of her issues, really, because she put on prosthetic legs. She has great prosthetic legs. Kathy Lee Gifford one time asked me on the Today Show, she said, well, I guess you're not a leg man. Trying to be cute and funny. And I looked at her and said, sure I am. She takes those suckers off every night and says, knock yourself out, big boy, I'm going to bed. Can't believe she didn't know what to say. And, but the debilitating pain that my wife lives with and the relentless pain from all the breaks and all the injuries, all the scar tissue, there's not a lot you can do about it. Sometimes the treatment is worse than, or complicates it even more. So it's a moving target with her, and it's relentless. And I've learned a few things along the way. I'm kind of the crash test dummy of caregivers. If you can fail at it, I failed at it. But I've learned something through it. Anybody here failed stuff? Thank you, misery loves company. And by the way, I may just get out here and walk out amongst y'all. Amongst, y'all say that up here? Yeah. Y'all say y'all? All right, let me give you a southern vocabulary here. We're going to have to start this off right. You guys like, for a condiment, mayonnaise. In the South, mayonnaise, a lot of people here. Up here would be my mother and the rest of them. In the South, it'd be mama or nim. Say it with me. Mama or nim. Congratulations, you now speak Southern. Y'all is... all of you all is all y'all. And that's how we do it. And I like in Boston, they'll leave the R's out of words. Fide, Pock, and Kai. In the South, we add them back in. Yeller and Winder. Did y'all see Old Yeller? They didn't name him because he talked loudly. The dog did not bark loudly. That's why they named him Old Yeller. It's Old Yellow, but it's Yeller. See, you learned something they didn't. It's a little early in the morning, isn't it? So my journey as a caregiver started at the ripe age of 22 when I met a woman with a broken body and fell in love with her. And I was dumber than a box of hammers. Just clueless. I didn't know anything from anything. I remember going one time into an employee meeting at one of my first corporate jobs, and they said, we're going to talk about employee benefits. Hand to God, I really thought they meant longer lunches and better parking when they said benefits. I really did. I truly did, which is embarrassing, I know, but I've come from that to dealing with a medical nightmare that has now just, we stopped at 10 million. Who knows how much this thing is? And that's 10 million US dollars. Y'all do the math. I don't know what that is. That's a lot of money that I can count. That's not the average stuff that I spend all the time for just over-the-counter stuff and other ancillary things we're doing on. It is relentless. And you feel like you're just tap dancing in a minefield all the time. And you are. About several years ago, I had just kind of reached the point where I was coming unglued. When I saw the couch here, I was a little concerned because I spent a lot of time on the couch. I think you know I've spent a lot of time on the couch. And I found myself, I'm just going to walk out here. This is what I do. Y'all, we just be family today. And so I'm going to make the camera work. They're going to be working so hard. And so I couldn't even think I wasn't sleeping. I had a surgery myself on an appendectomy that went wrong, and the doctor ended up messing up, and I about bled out in surgery, and I wasn't getting sleep. And for the first time, and I never get sick. I get bronchitis maybe a couple times a year, maybe. The flu maybe once every 2 or 3 years. And that's it. I've never had any kind of medical issues myself. And when I went down, the family showed up to try to help a little bit because it was pretty serious. And then nobody knew how to help me, and nobody knew how to do what I was doing. There wasn't some kind of continuity plan past me. And I bet you I'm not the only caregiver in this room that can say that, am I? How many of you all have a continuity plan after you? And so the family was everybody was trying to help me, but nobody knew what help looks like. Now my wife, I know how to help my wife. I can do it all, man. I cook, I clean. If you talk to me, I think Annie's called me a couple times and I'm sitting there doing the dishes or cooking something while she's talking. I mean, and I don't make any apologies for it. I'm a caregiver. If I didn't have a Bluetooth, man, I mean, that's the best invention for me because I can use hand-free. If I'm having to hold the phone in my ears, I am not talking to you. Nobody knew what to do for me. And I wasn't getting any sleep. I felt like I was truly coming unglued. And I drove over to a local mental health hospital in Nashville. And this is kind of embarrassing. Y'all tell everybody. And I walked up to the front. And I just stood there for a minute. And they looked at me kind of funny, and I thought, gosh, they're looking at me funny. I cannot be the weirdest looking person who's ever come in here. And I said, they said, are you lost? And I teared up a little bit. I said, yeah, I think I am. Do y'all take walk-ins? They looked at me kind of funny again. I said, really, is that the worst question, the funkiest question y'all ever gotten? I mean, this is a nut house, and I'm asking if you take walk-ins, and you're looking at me like I'm, you know. But I let it go. There's some battles you just live to fight another day. And I said, yeah, we did. So they took my wallet, they took my keys, took my blood pressure, took me back to this room that looked like it'd seen better days. And a counselor came in and talked to me. It must have been every bit of an hour and a half. And I just kind of just let it all out. Who here's done that? Just kind of verbally vomited. We're going to be family here, y'all. We'll say vomit in public. Puke if that makes you feel better. Hurl, toss your cookies. What works up here? I don't know. I could go on for days. Talk to God on the porcelain telephone, whatever. I don't know. Oh, that's funny. Like I'm the only one that's done that. And she looked at me afterwards. She said, well, we can't keep you here. You're not crazy. And I said, can I get that in writing? There's some people who really want to see that. She said, nah, you're not crazy, but you're burnt out. And she gave me a couple names of some counselors I can call. I ended up calling them, it was useless. They were useless. And then she said something to me though. She said, I'd recommend a book for you to read, but you're the guy to write it. I thought, well, okay. And then she said one other thing. She said, we got box lunches we've been giving out. We got one left. It's tuna fish. You want it? I said, yes, I do. So I walked out with my tuna fish box there with the apple and some chips and a soft drink in it. And I thought about getting a t-shirt that says, I tried to have myself committed and all I got was a tuna sandwich. I could sell those. And I sat there in the car and had my tuna fish sandwich by myself, and I thought about what this woman told me. I'd recommend a book for you to read, but you're the guy to write it. And I thought, well, what would I say to a caregiver? I say to you. My heart is very tender towards the HD community because I think it is disproportionately hard what you deal with. And I mean that. I've spent enough time and I see it and I understand the heartache that goes on in the heart of a caregiver and the family. And while we wait for all these wonderful things that are happening with research and so forth, we still got to live today. We still got to get through right now. What do you say to a caregiver? Do you talk about how to deal with healthcare companies? It's not that complicated. If anybody tells you it is, they'll lie about other things too. It's really not. When they bring a knife to a fight, you take a calculator. Math always wins. And I would do that. Anybody ever hung up on a healthcare company? I've done it. They called it one time. I wanted them to send over a nurse to change the dressing on my wife's limb. This is on her left limb. They had a lot of problems with it after it was amputated. It wouldn't heal up. She'd been in the hospital earlier that year for a pretty nasty infection. So I said, send the nurse, let's change this dressing regularly. Let's be a little bit more aggressive. Well, that's not covered in your policy, Mr. Rosenberger. I said, I don't care. Send them over anyway. Well, you don't understand. I said, no, you don't understand. You look at what you all paid on behalf of her earlier this year, weigh that against what it would cost to send a nurse over to change the dressing, do the math, and call me back. And I hung up on her. 90 minutes later, I got a call, said, we're sending a nurse. Because no matter what kind of medicine comes from government or anything else, most of them you figure out that $45,000 is worse than $1,000. Some of them are a little slower, and it takes them 90 minutes to figure it out. But I didn't get emotionally involved with that because I knew I was right, and I told them, I said, do it, or I'm taking her to the hospital and admitting her, and I could do it. I could make a case for her on any given day. They want to keep her out of the hospital. So I learned that a long time ago. Dealing with doctors, is that what we need to spend a lot of time with caregivers? It's not that complicated. When I was first in this, I was terrified of physicians. I thought they were, second only to God, and some of them were questionable on that. At least that's what they told me. And, I remember I had a doctor one time, though, that was giving me some attitude about dealing with my wife. And we were talking about it back and forth, and he was just kind of pushing back and kind of being a little bit gnarly. And I stopped him and I said, Doc, with all due respect, I've been taking care of her since you were in junior high school, so let's keep this thing in perspective, all right? He backed up. It doesn't hurt that I'm a second-degree black belt. But I didn't use it. And so I thought, what's the issue for caregivers? What do we say? What's the problem? I don't care what kind of research you have, what kind of cures you have, what kind of financial resources you have. If your head space and your heart space is so messed up that you can't think straight, none of that matters. And I started speaking to the heart of a caregiver who is struggling, who is dealing with stress, frustration, guilt, fear, isolation, resentment, obligation, all of the above. And that's what I started writing to, and I started writing to myself. I started writing to that 22-year-old man who fell in love, 22-year-old boy, who fell in love with a beautiful woman with a broken body that was just clueless, and say, okay, son, here's what's coming down the pike. Here's how we're going to get you ready for it. That book now is Hope for the Caregiver. It's in its 5th printing. I didn't bring any books with me. I'm not selling anything. Go get it if you want on Amazon, because they say selling in Canada is a real pain. I believed them. I just came. My new book hits this month. It's like a little field menu. Somebody's going to win it today. It's 2 of them. I brought 2 of them just to give away. It's called 7 Caregiver Landmines and How You Can Avoid Them. And I'm going to be doing an audiobook on that too. I've got an audiobook on the other one. If y'all just want to hear me talk. I go to a lot of places, they say, just talk for us, just say something. Say my name in Southern. But I did this because I wanted to put something in the hands of people that was simple, easy to read, not very complicated. I don't even know a lot of big words. I tell people it's so easy to read it in the bathroom. I know, because that's where I wrote it. And I don't want a textbook. I don't have time to read a bunch of stuff with people. I mean, y'all? I mean, who wants to read that? I don't have that kind of time. Nor inclination. I need to hear from somebody who's got the level of experience that I've had, who's wrestled with this thing over and over. So I read my own book. I listen to my own show. My show grew. I started doing the show. About 6 or 7 years ago, I started one station in Nashville. Now we're on 200 stations. And I've got a lot of listeners in Canada. In fact, I got a lot of folks that live in this area that listen in and call in. They can stream the show and then the podcast and so forth. And we're really growing and doing it. And we deal with all kinds of stuff. I've expanded the conversation about caregiving to other areas, not just dealing with people. When they think of caregivers for whatever reason, they think of nursing homes. Well, that's not my life. That's not your life. I deal with autism. I deal with all of it. Opioids. We've been hearing a lot of talk about opioids. Does anybody hear the word caregiver mentioned in that conversation? I'm talking about it. I've filled 7 figures worth of opioid prescriptions over the years with my wife. Not one doctor, not one nurse practitioner, not one pharmacist ever looked at me and said, dude, we are putting a lot of chemicals in your wife's body. You might want to get some help for yourself. Nobody ever said that to me. How do you all, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but anybody here been in a relationship with somebody on opioids? Not illegally necessarily, just taking them. It will affect you. Everybody around that person, it will affect you. Mental illness. This kid down in Florida that you guys saw, that horrific shooting we had when he went into that school down in Florida, South Florida, Park. Killed all those kids. Did you know the police were called out to that house of that kid 39 times? My first question when I saw that was, who's calling the police? It was the caregiver. It was his mother. Most of them. Did any of these police officers ever go to this woman and say, your son is messed up. He is in bad shape. He may not make it, but you have to. And it's imperative for you to get help for yourself. 3 months after she died, he shoots up a school. The well-being, the safety, the good headspace of a caregiver, I believe, is imperative. If the caregiver goes down, what happens next? You heard the litany of things that my wife deals with. If I go down, what happens to her? Now, I don't have to just go down and die. What happens if I go down financially? What happens if I go down emotionally, physically, where I start developing health problems? In the United States, 72% of the 65 million caregivers do not see their own physician regularly. And it's not because of a health care access problem. It's because of a decision problem. And they try to white knuckle it. We're going to get through this on our own, and then when they die, or so they get better or they get worse, then we'll go take care of ourselves. That's the mentality. Who here is dealing with that mentality themselves right now? We're just going to get through this, and then we'll get on with our lives. After about surgery number 50 with my wife, I realized that we're not getting through this. This is our life. And I better take some steps to deal with that. So when I started writing about those things. Caregivers gain a lot of weight. I got so big it took 2 dogs to bark at me. I got a bunch of those. I was standing on the street corner and a cop told me to break it up. I broke my family tree. My nickname was Dang. But we gained a lot of weight because we need comfort. They don't call it comfort food for nothing. So we'll grab something that's just easy, makes us feel better. And all of a sudden, 5 years into this, we're waddling down the street. We've got to back that off. You're not going to get out of it overnight. You didn't get in it overnight. You're not going to get out of it. But I help caregivers get to the place because the real weight that we have is around our hearts. We are so heavy with grief. We're so heavy with frustration. We're so heavy with resentment. We're so heavy with fear that we got to do something to comfort us. The divorce rate. I don't know what it is here in Canada, but the United States. If you have a disability in the family, it's almost 90%. How is that a good thing? Other than divorce lawyers, who thinks getting divorced is a good financial move? I mean, sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes a relationship is so toxic. My wife, when she gave up her legs, they were so broken. We held on to it for so long, and finally, she just said, "Take them off. They're killing me. I can't live." It was a horrifying decision. She did it twice, 4 years apart. But the lesson she learned, and she was right here, if she was right here, she would say this to you. There are worse things than amputation. And sometimes the things that we hold on to are so toxic that we have to amputate to be able to live. I understand that. That happens in some relationships. But when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, the stress that's on a family when you're dealing with the disease is just horrifying. And it crumbles marriages. It doesn't cause character defects. It doesn't do that. But it amplifies them. You tracking with me on that one? It's like miracle growth for character defects. You know? So if you've got something that you're dealing with, trust me, it will come out. Been there, done that. And it will come out. The pressure is too much. Caregiving. Anybody familiar with the Tough Mudder? Who knows what a Tough Mudder is? God bless you. A buddy of mine does this. He does Tough Mudder. And I was thinking about this morning because I got up very early this morning because I'm still on Central Time Zone. So I'm sitting around thinking of things this morning, which is always a bad thing for me. My mind is a dangerous place to go into unaccompanied. But he does these Tough Mudder events. For those of you who don't know what they are, they're extreme obstacle courses, but they're not done like the Ninja Warrior things. Y'all have seen that, right? It's not like that where it's an individual competing. Yes, you're competing as an individual, but you're also competing as a team. And they're extreme things, like they go through strands of electrified wire. And they'll walk through it and like get shocked, or they'll jump into a big pool of ice water, and they got to swim across it. But there are people cheering you on. There are people helping you. There are people that will lift people with disabilities over a wall, for example. That's what caregiving should and really kind of does look like. That we are competing in a horrific obstacle course where we can really get hurt and we need other people to help us. So I started writing about these things, and I want to spend a little bit of time this morning. And by the way, you are free at any point to stop and ask me any question. You know, this is your time as caregivers and as friends in this community. Whatever. I don't stand on ceremony. I think y'all know that by now. I'm pretty relaxed about that sort of thing. So I'm just going to jump into some things, and I'll hopefully give you some insights. Annie, where'd she go? Oh, she left. That's comforting. Wow. You know, I'm here just pouring out my heart. You know, do you see these rocks on the table? I was putting them out this morning. I showed up and Annie's having me carry boxes of rocks. I said, "Can I help with these?" "Yeah, carry these rocks." And I'm carrying boxes of rocks. I don't think I said, I'm going to go back to Nashville. Gracie's going to say, "Well, how was it?" "Well, I carried some rocks, dug a few ditches, helped some people out of the mud." No, I love doing it, but I just want to make sure I watch my time, so don't let me run over time. Annie, don't let me run over time. Okay, all right. I'm a member of a 12-step class for talkers. It's called On and On and On and On.
They have rocks to throw at you.
Oh, they have rocks to throw at me. Well said. Well said. When I started writing about that, I thought, okay, where are the areas? Where's the flashpoints for caregivers? And I just want to talk about a few this morning. Caregivers suffer from what I call the 3 I's. The 3 I's. This is very easy to remember. Those of you taking notes, and I see none of you are. No, there's one. One note taker right here. She's got it. So after the show today, no, I'm just kidding. 3 I's. We lose our independence. We become isolated. We lose our identity. Okay? Every caregiver deals with that. If you're not dealing with that as a caregiver, give yourself some time, you will. Oh, by the way, a special shout out, Corey. Thank you. Corey met me in Baltimore and recommended that I come up here. So if I really bomb today, there's Corey. Take the rocks at Corey and stone him. It was funny, by the way, Brendan, when you talk about, you said no smoking. And yet we were at the table talking about medical marijuana for HD. And I didn't know what the conversation was up here. Somebody asked me about, with Gracie being in so much pain, my sister called and said, have y'all thought about medical marijuana? And I said, well, yeah, but I don't think anybody wants me taking care of her while I'm stoned. She said, not you. So I don't know if that applies as well. I don't know where that conversation stands, but I thought it was funny because I just had the conversation. You're up there, there's no smoking. Well, wait a minute. The doctor says we got to. Y'all just walk away from that, nobody gets hurt. So, 3 I's. Loss of independence, isolation, loss of identity. Let me tell you what that loss of identity looks like. Ask a caregiver, how are you doing? And guess what they'll say? Well, he's had a bad night. She's not doing too well. Our situation is this. We did such and such. They don't speak in first person singular. And when you push them, say, no, I really want to know how you're doing. That's when the stammering starts. That's when the tears fill up the eyes. And see, I don't care what comes after the word I. They can say, I hurt, I'm tired, I'm just pissed. I don't care what comes after the word I. Can I say that, by the way? Y'all say that? Okay, I just want to make sure. This is going out loud. I'm just, that's my wife watching, I'm sure. I don't care what comes after the word I, because now we can have a real conversation. But in order to have that real conversation, it's important to engage that caregiver to speak in their own voice. And I'm learning how to do that myself. That's why I have a radio show. It's ironic that I have a radio show because I had to learn to speak in my own voice. And stop. I can't count how many people have asked me over the years about my wife. How's Gracie? How's Gracie? How's Gracie? And I appreciate the sentiment. I really do. But I can count the ones who've asked about me. Why is that important? Because if a caregiver loses their identity as they do this, and they lose themselves, what good is this to their loved one? And believe me on this. Take this to the bank. It is a short step to resentment. Short step to resentment. Caregivers struggle in what I call a fog of caregivers, fear, obligation, and guilt. And that obligation leads to resentment. Because here's how you tell if you're feeling obligated and you start to get resentful. I gotta, I have to, I must, I should be, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do that. We should have all over ourselves. That's funny. And we talk like this to ourselves. And then we start having dark thoughts. I wrote an op-ed recently about the dark thoughts of caregivers. We had a situation in Tennessee, a tragic one. There was another one in Oregon, and several things going around the country on this, and you're going to see this increasingly, sadly. But a young couple had a nonverbal child with autism, and they said he ran off, 5 or 6 years old. Children with autism elope. That's a big issue. And the whole community's out looking for this kid, and it turns out he didn't elope. The father beat him to death. And the mother watched. And it's been a horrific thing. In Oregon, there was a young mother with a special needs child. She shot the child and turned the gun on herself. She didn't end up killing herself, wounding herself, but she's been charged with murder. A guy was in Pennsylvania, from Maryland, went to a fair in Pennsylvania, and his wife with dementia with him. And he had a collar around her neck so she wouldn't wander off, and had her on her leash. Somewhere along the line, he thought that was a good idea. These are not the only stories you're going to be reading about. But what happens is that caregiver gets so isolated, all of a sudden, crazy stuff starts making sense. Because they're turned around. They're disoriented. They're in that fog because they're isolated. They're trapped, and they've lost that independence. And they've lost themselves in it. How do you help somebody like that? This is what I do on my show. This is what I do when I speak. This is what I do when I write. I help give caregivers a well-lit path to safety where they can just catch their breath, take a knee if they have to, and then start backing it up a little bit. I had a lady call into my show the other day, and I deal with this a lot. I deal with alcoholism, for example. It's a chronic disease. You got a chronic disease, you got a caregiver. Somewhere in that orbit. But this lady called in and she said, I'm taking care of my mother, and she's just wearing me out. I cannot make her happy. She is just so miserable. And And I said, and then she went on to say, I've been sober for 6 years, and it makes me want to start drinking again. I cannot deal with this woman. I can't make her happy. And I said to her, and this is live on the air, this is what I do. And I said, her happiness is not your mission. You are not required to make her happy. Your sobriety, however, is paramount. And I asked her, I said, have you been to a meeting? Not lately. You got a sponsor? I said, let go of her happiness. That is not your job. Because if your sobriety is gone, she is really screwed. Because she's got a drunk caregiver. Now that's about as raw and as brass tacks as I know how to get. But that's reality. And I helped her back up and understand that it is okay for her to go to a meeting and let her mother just be miserable if she wants to be. She's as happy or as miserable as she chooses to be. I'm as happy or as miserable as I choose to be. Doesn't mean we don't have pain, doesn't mean we don't have sorrow. But my goal for us as caregivers is not to be pain-free. That's a ridiculous goal. That's a stupid goal. We're going to have pain. We're going to have grief. We're going to have sorrow. We're going to cry. One day we're going to stand at a grave. That's our goal, is to stand at a grave. We're hopefully not the ones in the grave. When it comes to our loved ones. But we don't have to do it with clenched fists, do we? Anybody here ever, I don't know if I want to raise hands on this. Anybody here ever feel resentment? As a pianist, I can tell you it's really hard to play the piano with a clenched fist. I have to let it go. I have to open my hands so that music can flow. And I can't be tense like this. I've got to breathe it out. As a caregiver, it is very hard to caregive with clenched fist. You can't push a wheelchair with a clenched fist. Try it. Not with them in it. Just go out in the field somewhere and just try it. By yourself. But you can't do it. So how do you deal with it? How do you let it go? What does that look like? How do you learn to embrace the person? While separating the disease. Particularly when you share the same bed. This is a side note. It's a really funny story. Because I'm a really funny guy. I'm really funny. This lady was tucking in her husband. She's a nurse, but she was taking care of her husband who has Alzheimer's. And she was tucking him in bed. And he's looking at her. He's just got the covers like that. He's just looking at her. She starts getting undressed. And his eyes really widen up. He's very nervous about this. She said, what's the matter? He said, well, I'm married. And she said, well, so am I. And she got in bed with him. He never got out of bed. He was obviously concerned, but he wasn't that concerned. But I thought that she saw the humor of that. I thought that was kind of funny. Y'all obviously mixed on that. Some of y'all just need to go to church. But when you share the same bed with somebody who has a chronic condition, how do you separate that condition from the person? How do you see the heart and not the chart? Do you just focus on the disease, or do you focus on the person? The person's heart cry is a lot softer than the disease's heart cry. The disease's cry. Y'all found that to be true? Very hard to hear the heart. But we as caregivers have to learn how to do that. But who's listening to our hearts? Who's asking us about us? How do we learn to laugh in this? How do we learn to make jokes about things like this? I remember, y'all know who Jeff Foxworthy is?
Yes.
I have to tell Jeff, he's big in Canada. He's big in Kelowna. Jeff's a friend of mine, and we did a thing on You Might Be a Caregiver If a while back. AARP asked us to do it for a kind of a PSA, and I said, you want to do some of these with me? And he's never let out that "you might be a" phrase to anybody that I know of. And I said, you want to do this with me? He said, sure, write out some jokes, I'll do it with you. I said, these aren't jokes. This is my life. And so we did this, and I'll give a few on there, but I remember when we first did this, there were people that originally started to protest because they thought I was making too much light of this, of their painful journey. They took it so seriously. Then they saw my resume. I'm 32 years into being a caregiver. If I'm going to laugh, by God, I'm going to laugh. I'm going to have a good time, and I'll give you a couple of those. How do you know if you're a caregiver? If you've ever hooked up your dog to your wife's wheelchair just to see if it would work. No. If while at the grocery store, you're the one asking for a price check on suppositories. I am not the only one in this room. If a hospital bed has never hampered your love life. There ain't no use wasting a semi-private room, you know. If you've ever used Neosporin as a verb, hold still, baby, I got a Neosporin here so we can get to church on time. And Jeff busts me up with this one every time. He said, if anybody's ever seriously asked you, let me see if I can imitate Jeff. If anybody's ever seriously asked you, baby, have you seen my left leg? You're probably a caregiver. But I learned to laugh at this, but I had to learn to separate all this dysfunction from this extraordinary person. And I had to learn how to separate myself from that and realize I am a steward of this. I didn't do this to my wife. I can't undo it. And those of you living with HD have to understand you didn't do it. More importantly, you can't undo it. And if you get nothing out of this today, understand that you are powerless over that. But you are not powerless over how you conduct yourself in it. That much I can tell you. I cannot make legs grow back. I cannot take away her pain. I can care for her. I can be responsible. I can be a good steward. But I can't fix. And the only way I learn that is I go back to learn my own voice. I have to learn who I am and what I can and cannot do. A reporter asked me one time, what's the toughest thing you've dealt with as a caregiver? And I said, hands down. You heard my resume as a caregiver. Hands down, knowing what is mine and what is not mine to fix. Once I started wrestling with that, everything else fell into order. Because that's my battle. That's what my book is about. That's what my show is about. That's what my message is helping caregivers understand what is not theirs and what is in their power to do. I have the power to be funny. I have the power to laugh. I have the power to comfort. I have the power to speak words of life and encouragement. I have the power to care. I do not have the power to fix. And nor do you. That is beyond our pay grade. But that takes all the burden off it. I don't have to be something I'm not. I don't have to be like this. There have been times when I was straining so hard, and good caregivers sometimes are like this. They are bringing a piano in here. But I have to go back there and play. You don't have to bring it up here. Hey, bring it up on the stage, my God. By the way, Eddie, we got a few more minutes. This is what I want you to understand. And I want me to understand this. I'm preaching to myself. I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to go get the recording of this. I'm going to listen to it myself. Because I got to hear it from somebody with my level of experience. I have got to understand what I can and cannot do. I've got to understand this so that I can more effectively better care for my wife and be healthier in it. Healthier caregivers make better caregivers. And if you're just pissed off all the time, I don't care what kind of a good job you think you're doing. It's unsustainable. It is unsustainable to be that angry. And I'm going to give you an example of how I learned to get my voice back and what I want to do for you caregivers. Now, my dad's a minister. I don't know if that shows you or not. My pastor tells me, my pastor's followed me. He's told me if you have hair like mine, you can have an international TV. But I play in church a lot. Now, we're not going to have church here right now. I can do Billy Graham, of Why don't you come? All those are coming, you come too. We have to, we also do run danger, but I don't think I'll do that when Bill's ready for the same sentence. My pastor asked me to play. He asked me to play as people were coming into the church, just to kind of keep a reverent atmosphere, so it'd be calm. Well, my wife is a singer, and she's a real kid singer. I mean, she's the real deal. And Google it. Just go out and listen to it. You listen, she can really sing. And I've been playing for her for some 30 years. So when I sat down at the piano, I was playing hymns that I've known and played since I was 5 years old. I've been playing for that long. And I played this. Oh, those are great chords. Even if I do some, those are great chords. But y'all have no idea what I'm learning. I had to go back and learn the melody. And my piano professor told me, he said, you take a song and you play it with one finger as expressively as you can. That's how you learn how to better play your instrument. Now, for a pianist, it's no big deal to play one note if you're a trumpet player. You know, oh, come on, that's funny. It's no big deal to play, a saxophone player, if that helps you. But as a pianist, we got 10 fingers and we're used to use them. And we have to force ourselves to play the melody. How many of you all know the melody of your own voice? How many of you lost that melody? How many of you are straining to be able to speak from your own heart and say, this is who I am. This is what I do as a caregiver. This is what I do for my fellow caregivers and for myself. I help us play the melody. So when I went back, I had to train myself. I didn't do that. Do y'all know that song? Now I'm playing something, now I'm saying something, because I played the melody. Do you know your melody? Are you willing to, anybody here willing to admit that they maybe have lost their melody? Would you like to get it back? Are you throwing rocks over there? This is what I'm on a mission to help my fellow caregivers learn to be able to do, is to speak from their own hearts. It's okay to say I hurt. I tell people say, well, how do you help the caregiver? What's it look like? I say, here's what you don't do with caregiver. Never say, well, let me know if there's something I do to help you. Now I got to think of something for you to do. This is how you speak to a caregiver. You look at them and you say, I see you. And I see the magnitude of what you carry. I hurt for you. I'm not going to let you go through this alone. You cannot do this alone. You must not try. You will get hurt and you will take people with you if you do. That's why this organization exists. And I had a guy ask me at the HD conference, I'm trying to figure out how to get back stage. I can stay back here at the channel. Y'all just turn around. Y'all know this is going to be interactive. It is. It's like a dinner theater. I had a guy ask a question at the end. He said, well, we in the HD community, and I thought it was a great question. He said, no, don't get up. Keep your seats there. He said, we in the HD community are disproportionately affected by our loved ones who don't seem to care about what we do. And I thought, like, that's unique to HD. And I told myself, you ever been married? Sometimes, even in the absence of HD or anything else, we just will do something and the other person just won't appreciate it. Stop looking to other people that can't offer it for your own sense of self-worth or validation. Don't go into a hardware store and ask about bread. That's what this community is about. This is a place where people can look at you and understand your journey without you feeling weird about it, without you feeling like nobody really gets it with me, nobody understands this. This is where you do this. This is your family. This is why I'm so honored to be a part of this, because I can come in here, I speak fluent caregiver. I get it. And we can look at each other, yeah, our situation's the same. I don't know how many spouses of amputees are in here. So our situation's not very different. Who's an amputee over here? Did I hear one? Raise your hand. No, that's a joke. I'm just kidding. We got a lot of amputee jokes at our house. Sorry, don't. But Gracie's pretty funny about it. She doesn't care. We have a prosthetic limb outreach that we do in Africa, and we put legs on amputees over there. We collect used limbs from all over the country. They go to a local prison in Tennessee where inmates disassemble so we can recycle the parts. And we tip them there, build a brand new custom leg over there. And so we have a good time. I call that Operation Footloose. We learned how to laugh at these things because people intercepted us so that we were not alone. Do you realize how much laughter has been going on today in the face of one of the ugliest diseases that we could ever know? And this is what happens when we get around community. And this is what happens when we get around family. And this is what happens when we pull together to help each other over obstacle courses that are so brutal, so wearisome, so heartbreaking. We're not alone. Identity, loss of independence, and isolation. This place is helping you regain those things. I've probably gone a little over time. Annie, okay? She left again.
It's okay, the Kleenex is here.
Are there any questions? No math. Are there any questions?
So this is something that, well,
Here, speaking of the flower. I looked at the proposal. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know where, here's the mic right here. Hey, look, if I got half the hair like Phil Donahue, you might as well act like him. Really? I am not the only one in here who knows who Phil Donahue is.
Thanks, Bill. So this is something that our family struggles with, obviously, and I'm guessing every single other family here. My sister and my father just both recently went into care. And my mom has been a caregiver for, I don't know, 3 or 4 lifetimes now.
Okay.
Now, it was a decision that she really, really struggled with and continues to struggle with. What advice do you give to other families that are helping caregivers make that decision, or for caregivers themselves who are trying to make that decision?
You know, I try to get out of the advice-giving business. I ask a question. If you don't put them in care, who's going to care for them? And if your mom is not up to the task, or it's killing your mom to do it, where's the decision point? I think the thing is we feel guilty when we see suffering. And so we will hurl ourselves recklessly at suffering. But this is not episodic suffering. This is lifetime suffering. So your mom, tell me your name. Linda. If Linda succumbs to this disease, because this disease can have more than one victim that's not even diagnosed with it. We all know that. But if she succumbs, what's the plan? You? Yeah. So the vested interest is to make sure we have properly cared for the loved ones that are dealing with this to the best of our abilities. But she's one of the loved ones that's dealing with it. So we've got to care for Linda. Again, Gracie is important. I want her to be as comfortable. I want to do the best I can to care for her and do all the things that are necessary. But if it comes to the point where it is killing me, that I have to raise my hand and ask for help, and we have to sit down and look at what help looks like, and the family has to pull together on this. And one of the things that so many people, wherever there's a situation where there's a chronic impairment, there's always one caregiver that's leading the pack, and everybody else kind of is in the orbit, and then a lot of the ones in the orbit will tend to call out instructions from the cheap seats. Oh, I've gone from preaching to bed on that. And so what we want to do is learn how to keep those voices at bay. See, one of the reasons they introduced me with martial arts, and I put that in important because I do self-defense. It's hard to defend what you don't value. And there's too many of us in this room that do not value ourselves, and we think our lives are forfeit because of someone else's condition. And I'm saying to you, no. Your happiness, your existence, your name, your identity is not forfeit because of HD. If y'all are in church, you'd say amen right now. Some of y'all need to go to church. It is not forfeit. My ability to be funny, my ability to play the piano, my ability to say my own name and to speak from my own heart is not forfeit because my wife's suffering is extreme. It is paramount that I learn this. And it's paramount that I learn how to ask for and receive help. What does help look like? One of the landmines I put in my book is thinking that it's all up to me. And Linda knows. I believe you do. It ain't all up to you, is it? She knows it better. She knows it better than she did when she got here. Because it's not. Why do you think this organization exists? They are collectively grabbing as many of you by the lapels as they can to say it's not all up to you. But you got to receive it. You can't play a piano with clenched fist. And if you're holding on so tight to what you think you've got to do, it's going to hurt you. And you're going to end up hurting the one you cared for the most. You got to let it go. It's mighty hard to receive a hand that's extended to you like this. There are hands extended to each of you in this very room. The question is, are you going to take it? You're going to trust them. And guess what? The people that will help you, they'll get it wrong. It's okay. We're not looking for perfection. We're looking for progress here. Don't put demands on what this looks like as far as, oh, I've got to do this. If you don't do it right, they're going to get it wrong. There's a chapter in one of my books called They're Going to Fall. If you're taking care of somebody with prosthetic legs who wants to walk, they're going to fall. It happens. Pick them up, dust them off, dry the tears. I learned something the other day. After all these years, I was carrying something out of the car and I heard a thump. And Gracie was reaching for something out of her wheelchair. She didn't have her legs on. And she fell. And I heard it. And I rushed back in and she's laying kind of a little bit shocked because when she falls, it's a solid fall. It's a hard fall. And she's laying there, kind of stunned. I didn't say, what were you thinking? You messed up. You know, and sadly I've done that before. I berated her when she fell because I can be an ass. This time I did better. And I got down on the floor with her and I just held her until the tears stopped. See, it's not just falling. It's the fact that it's a reminder that she's broken. We're going to fall. If anybody helps you, Linda's going to fall. They're going to mess it up. We're all broken. We hold each other until the tears stop. We help each other back up. We keep going. We get healthier. We're not going to stop hurting. We're not going to stop grieving, but we don't have to grieve with despair. We don't have to grieve with rage. I've done that. It doesn't work. The decision point comes is how do we protect Linda's life in the face of this horrible disease? You cannot just focus on one thing. You've got to see the unit. And there are people that will help you in this organization. Back away from that and get a perspective. Sometimes when we're dealing with a chronic disease like this, sometimes when we're struggling with this, we have an amazingly clear view of 5 feet. Brenda's got a bigger view. She's got people around her that have a bigger view. There's resources that have a bigger view to help you. When you can't see it, they can. And they'll gently walk you through it to the point where you get to safety. When I was in Montana, I was out on snowmobiles with my son. We went back, way back in the backcountry. This is the opening prologue of my book. And I was there, and I got off the trail. The huge wind had come by, and the trail was just covered. Everything was just pristine. It was beautiful, but I was 10 miles back in the forest. I said, we're 10 miles from our home is 10 miles from the paved road, way back in the backcountry, 10,000 feet up. And I got off the trail. I landed on the side of the slope there, and my machine sunk. I get a machine out of the snow. I learned how to do that, but I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where the trail. And I was afraid it's a lot of work. These things can get a little heavy, and all of a sudden, I got my son with me. The sun's going down. The wind is picking up. It's very cold. I don't know where I am, and I'm stuck. I wasn't thinking about the destination of my home. I was thinking about where's the marker. And once we found the marker, we scouted around. My son helped me get the machine up and made a beeline to the marker where the snow was more packed. Caught my breath. We got on down the mountain. This is what we're doing. We're going to help Linda, every other caregiver around, find that next marker. Where's the marker? Don't worry about getting all the way down the mountain. Let's just get to safety where we're making better decisions right now, right here, today. Does that track? I'm not going to try to tell you what that looks like today because I don't know any more than you know from me. But I do know that if we don't get her to safety, your words, we're screwed. Those are your words, not mine. Any other questions? I got the sign of 5 minutes, and then the rocks start coming. I feel like Spanky and the Little Rascals when he held the shield up. I know y'all saw that. Who saw that? Thank you for being older. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. I'll just say it and I'll repeat it. I'll have to read more to you.
As the child of a caregiver, how do you motivate the caregiver to get motivated themselves to find that identity and stuff again? Like if they're struggling.
As the child of a caregiver, how do you motivate the caregiver to find the help for themselves? I think for me, the way people what happened with me is the motivation that came with me, and my children necessarily didn't do this because they were a little bit younger when this started coming up with me as far as the motivation part of it. But I reached a place where I was so frustrated and miserable, but I was getting affirmation externally that just kept reinforcing the same thing. Sometimes pain is a great motivator. When it hurts bad enough, you'll ask for help. But we caregivers tend to numb ourselves. And with food, with booze, with drugs, with sex, whatever. There's a limited amount of vice that we'll do to numb ourselves, to medicate ourselves with. But what we want to do is keep affirming this and pointing them, but back it up into simple steps. Not like, hey, you need to get some help. Well, duh, thank you, Captain Obvious. When's the last time you saw your doctor? Can we sit with so-and-so while you go to your physician for a checkup? All of a sudden now we're starting to do tiny baby steps of help. I don't know if y'all have this problem up here, but down the south we have this in the fall. There are leaves in every gutter. It's a big problem. How many think it's a good idea for a caregiver to be up on the roof blowing out leaves? Can we send someone over to do this? I'm at the grocery store. Can I bring you some milk? People in the south, we're very good at short-term things. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, there's a casserole in the south. But eventually, somebody's got to learn how to cook. So we don't I don't recommend bringing a lot of dinners. You don't want to just be a tuna noodle helper. You want to learn how to cook. You want to be able to stock the pantry. And you want to start doing things, little tiny things that reinforce the concept that your health is important to me. But it starts with the doctor. Can we sit with them while you go there? Can we sit with them while you go to counseling? I recommend getting a social worker involved, and sometimes it takes an external person besides the voice of the child. It's very difficult for parents to listen to their children sometimes. But a third party may help. And a clergy, social worker. You've got lots of social workers you can point to. All those kinds of things. Don't try to solve the problem. Just back it away to the next right thing. Because you do the next right thing a couple of times in a row, and all of a sudden you're doing a lot of right things. And that's how it's done. We didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get out of it overnight. I'm pretty good at martial arts right now, but I didn't start off that way. Y'all heard of Shogun, right? I'm showed up. And, but I started off having to learn the basic steps of it. So you do the next right thing. The next right thing may be for her. People say, well, you need to take a break for yourself. What am I going to do on a break? I work all the time. And some say, well, go on a cruise. Are you kidding me? To go on a cruise? Just go ahead and just shoot me. I don't want to go on a cruise with a bunch of 1,000 needy people wanting to go to the buffet all the time. That's not, you're spitballing and trying to help me because they don't know what help looks like to me. But help to your mom or your dad or whoever's family member is, or somebody's a friend's mom or dad, looks like, when's the last time you saw your doctor? I keep pushing this. This is the first step. Get them to a healthcare professional so they can evaluate and let that healthcare professional know the kind of stress they're under as a caregiver. And then, hey, have you thought about maybe sitting down and talk with somebody about this? Ask gentle, leading questions, slowly. Remember, they're going to be like this. Their nerves are raw. So you got to talk slower. You got to speak caregiver to them. And get her my book. We're done. Kate says I'm done here. I don't have any more time for this. I wish I did. I could stay all day with you all. I'm very grateful for you. I've got to catch a plane tonight, taking the red eye back to Nashville, doing my show live tomorrow morning. I'm glad it's radio because I look like the wrath of God. But I want you all to know how much it means to me that you trust me with your heartache. You trust me with your pain on this journey. You trust me with your hearts. I take it very seriously. I love what I get to do. I love talking to caregivers. And I love talking to people who want to help caregivers. And healthy caregivers make better caregivers. And today's a great day to start being healthy. I don't care what you did last week. If you binged on donuts last week, you don't have to do it again today. Okay, it's not judgment. It's getting you to a path of safety. All right? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.